Hello, I'm Mike, and today I'm going to compare two scripting languages, PHP and JavaScript. PHP and JavaScript are both scripting languages that web developers use frequently, but each has its own nuances and use cases. In this video, we'll explore the differences between the two and when you should use each language in development projects. But before we get too far, I want to let you know that there will be links to more resources in the video description below, and remember, subscribe and ring that bell to get notifications for future helpful content. So, let's get started by looking at the similarities between PHP and JavaScript. PHP and JavaScript are both scripting languages. Scripting languages tend to be interpreted rather than compiled. That means that they are translated into machine code via a third party rather than directly. This has an impact on their runtime. Think of it this way. Imagine you want to translate a web page from your native language into Navajo. If you didn't know the Navajo language, you need an interpreter to help you, and the translation would take more time. This is why compiled languages tend to be faster than interpreted language. Another commonality is that PHP and JavaScript are weakly typed. This means that when you create a variable in either language, you do not need to assign its data type. It is assumed. So you can write the following code in PHP or in JavaScript. In both languages, these variables will be recognized as strings or sets of characters. This is opposed to a strongly typed language like Java, where you must say what type of variable you are using when you declare it. Both PHP and JavaScript are dynamically typed. In other words, you can change the type easily by redefining it in your code. In PHP, $x is now an integer. In JavaScript, x is now a number. Because types aren't defined explicitly in PHP or JavaScript, you need functions to tell you what data type you are working with. JavaScript has the typeOf function to do this. PHP has the getType function to return a variable's type. A new improved version of getType, getDebugType, is part of the PHP 8 release. A class is a generic grouping of objects. An object is an entity with properties, characteristics, and methods or behaviors. The game Dungeons & Dragons provides a good analogy. A player character corresponds to an object. Each character belongs to a character class, such as a barbarian, a rogue, or wizard. Objects can have any number of properties that you care to define. So a character's properties may include name, race, abilities like strength, intelligence, or wisdom, a personality type, are they bold, timid, or curious, alignment, are they lawful or chaotic, good or evil? You can use object methods to retrieve information about the object. Here is a PHP code example of a class and object definition. When this code is added to an HTML file, the output in the browser should be the following. You can also define methods which are actions that the objects take or have performed on them. In Dungeons & Dragons, they might be surprise attack, disarm trap, cast spell, resist poison. When a method is run on an object, the outcome may be dependent on the object's properties. Hence, a sorcerer's apprentice object will not be able to cast spells as effectively as a seasoned wizard object. Another thing that PHP and JavaScript have in common is that developers for both languages are in high demand. Developers using JavaScript and PHP are also well compensated. In the USA, they make an average of around $80,000 a year. The less good news for newcomers to PHP and JavaScript is that the official documentation for both languages is not very user-friendly. It's been written for experienced developers rather than beginners. PHP is a server-side scripting language. This means that it runs on the web server as opposed to a client machine. Server-side programming is useful for delivering dynamic content, typically from a database, to users such as a welcome message. Hi, Claire. When a user logs in. Server-side scripting is also used in e-commerce. For example, there are over 100 WooCommerce extensions that connect via APIs to different payment providers to process transactions. JavaScript is a client-side language, so it runs on a user's laptop, phone, or tablet. JavaScript can manipulate the DOM, the document object model, and you can think of it as a tree-like structure formed from the HTML of a web page. If you've ever come across an accordion or toggle, perhaps as part of a frequently asked questions plugin, you've seen client-side JavaScript in action. When you click or tap on a question, JavaScript event handlers toggle the CSS display on or off, showing or hiding the relevant answer. PHP runs in the back end of a website, the part that visitors do not see. In WordPress, this means that PHP does all the work on the web server and in the WordPress admin. JavaScript traditionally ran on the front end, but that changed in 2009 when Node.js, a back-end runtime, was launched. Today, JavaScript is truly a full-stack language, with PHP being a back-end language as part of the LAMP stack. LAMP stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. PHP can merge with HTML. You'll see this by examining the code for many web apps, including WordPress. Here is an example from the 2020 theme index.php file. However, if you mix PHP with other backend languages and web apps, it's harder to maintain them. Plus, you not only have to know PHP, you have to study and be competent in those other languages as well. JavaScript developers have a bit more freedom in writing their code. They can use the language with HTML, XML, and AJAX. Case sensitivity is the distinction between upper and lowercase letters when naming entities in the language. PHP is partially case sensitive. Case matters for some things and not others. PHP variables are case sensitive. So if you create a variable in PHP like this one, and try to get the value of dog, D-O-G all caps, later in your code, it won't work. PHP functions, however, are not case sensitive. If you create this function in PHP, and later call dogFetch with a capital D in your code, your function will still run. However, consistency in your code is the best coding practice. JavaScript, on the other hand, is completely case sensitive, so variables called Beagle, all lowercase, Beagle, all uppercase, and Beagle with just a capital B would all be distinct from one another. Syntax is the set of rules that govern a language. That includes word order, grammar, and punctuation. In English, we might say, I ate my soup slowly. But if you were Yoda, you would say this, my soup slowly I ate. Why? The syntax is different. Same words, different order. Some languages use words that appear the same, but they have different meaning. While humans are forgiving if we use the wrong word, computers are very literal. If we make a mistake in our programming syntax, a computer often doesn't know what we meant, which usually results in an error. With JavaScript and PHP, they both have the same double / syntax for single-line code comments. But PHP also has another form of comment syntax. If you try to use PHP comment syntax in JavaScript, you get this error. Other syntax errors are common to both JavaScript and PHP, such as missing a semicolon at the end of a line of code or not using a pair of curly braces for conditional statements. As we discussed earlier, JavaScript and PHP have different ways of declaring variables. They also define constants differently. JavaScript uses this syntax. For a simple constant like this, its value can't be changed later on, whereas PHP uses the define function for constants. By convention, PHP constants are styled in uppercase. Here's an example of this. The first two parameters within the brackets are self-explanatory. The third one, case insensitive, has a default value of false. Only if it is set to true will the constant be case insensitive, as we see here. Arrays are variables that can store more than one thing. In PHP, arrays are associative arrays or ordered maps. That is to say that the items within the array have related key and value pairs. A less abstract example is the following, where the key is a first name and the value is the surname. For ease of use, you can convert PHP objects to arrays and convert arrays to objects. However, JavaScript can only have arrays that have numbered indexes, as we see in this example. To retrieve a value, you have to reference the array index, which starts at 0. Associative arrays with their named indexes are not supported in JavaScript. One thing that PHP can do brilliantly is connecting to databases. PHP integrates particularly well with MySQL or MariaDB, both of which WordPress uses. A number of PHP frameworks also provide easy database integrations. Using a database is useful for searching, sorting, and filtering information to present to a user, such as products in an online store. Historically, JavaScript doesn't integrate with databases, though that is beginning to change. PouchDB is one example of a JavaScript database. Threading refers to the instructions that programming language can handle. PHP is multi-threaded, meaning that it can process multiple instructions in parallel. The converse is a single-threaded language like JavaScript, which can only handle one command at a time. In general, JavaScript executes faster than PHP on the same hardware. However, because JavaScript runs on the client, if the client machine is old and sluggish, that will have an effect on the execution time. PHP runs better than JavaScript when you are building real-time applications such as chatbots or games. The release of PHP 8 with just-in-time compiler is expected to make PHP even faster. Each language has its own package manager to manage packages, third-party reusable code modules that add extra functionality to a project. Some packages depend on others to run, so they are called dependencies. PHP has two package managers, Pair and Composer, which can download PHP packages on the packages repository. JavaScript has several well-known package managers, including NPM, Yarn, and Bower. Out of these, NPM is the most popular, with more than 11 million developers using it globally. PHP is the most used server-side language on the web today, easily beating its competition with nearly 80% of websites using it. While PHP is very popular, JavaScript is near ubiquitous on websites, with 97% of websites using it. PHP has a wide range of uses. It is probably best known for creating dynamic web pages. According to Built With, PHP is used by over 34 million websites, and it powers some of the best known and highest earning sites on the web, including Nike, Salesforce, and Walmart. PHP is a perfect fit if your project needs secure authentication of users. This includes cookie and session handling, username and password authentication, and two-factor authentication. As previously mentioned, PHP is good for working with databases because it can interface with a wide range of them. It also has built-in data security for handling user input to guard against threats like SQL injection attacks. PHP is also commonly used for building real-time applications like instant messaging. Finally, even if you do most of your work on the front end, you will need a server backend. PHP is an ideal choice as this is what it was created for. JavaScript has become so popular that perhaps the right question is, what isn't JavaScript used for? Aside from websites and web apps, JavaScript has been used to build mobile apps, web servers, games, slide decks, chatbots, and even programmable drones. The answer is yes, absolutely. A common example is with web forms, where it is useful to validate user input before it is saved into a database. You can use JavaScript for client-side validation, like checking if an email is in the correct format. And then following that, you can use PHP for server-side validation, like checking to see if the email exists in your database. As they are fairly easy to learn, there is no reason that you can't learn both PHP and JavaScript. The two languages rely on certain programming fundamentals such as variables, loops, conditional statements, scope, and objects. Because it is such a well-established and popular language, it's easy to learn PHP. As PHP is a server-side language, you need a server to write code. That could be a real web server or an emulation of one, such as a local development environment. You can get started learning JavaScript easily enough by practicing in the browser console. On the Chrome browser, you can access the console by typing Ctrl-Shift-J on Windows or Command-Option-J on a Mac. Where JavaScript gets harder to master is the sheer size of its ecosystem. The JavaScript language has expanded out from vanilla JavaScript to a plethora of frameworks. Angular, Vue, jQuery, and React are just some of the many that now exist. A good resource for beginners comes from the MDN web docs in their JavaScript documentation. We've linked this in the video description below. In this deep dive into PHP versus JavaScript, there isn't really one winner. They both have their strengths and weaknesses. PHP is stable and reliable, while JavaScript has become the cool kid on the block. But that doesn't mean that one is better than the other. Whichever one you choose for your next project, and that might be both, if you take the time to understand the languages, you can be sure that you'll build a website or app that will delight your users. Kinsta's WordPress hosting can speed up your website by up to 200%, and you'll get 24/7 support from our expert WordPress engineers. Let us show you the Kinsta difference. Try a free demo of our My Kinsta dashboard at demo.kinsta.com. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more tutorials, explainers, and helpful content like this.